Hi there, and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Barjo.
And I'm Hex. Coming up on the show, we review two incredibly different games, the monster hacking fantasy of Dungeon Siege 3, and Tetsuya Mizuguchi's trippy, music-infused Connect game, Child of Eden.
Plus, we answer more of your perplexing questions at the Ask Good Game desk and introduce you to Goose, our new field reporter who has a story up his sleeve. But first, can you guess the game for this week?
Tonight I'm investigating reports that aliens have invaded and are forcing people to dance.
Hex, it's been a while since we've given something away to a lucky viewer, so I've rustled up this copy of Dynamite Cop, which we can give away, and it's actually called Dynamite Cop because they couldn't get the license for Die Hard, and I'd just like to point out that all the sniper rifles and pirates on the front is not completely representative of the actual gameplay, and it's for Dreamcast from 1999. It's pretty good.
I think you should go read the news.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Renowned British game designer Charles Cecil has been named as a member of the British Empire for services to the computer games industry.
Would you like a dog biscuit?
Would you like a smack in the mouth, Chico?
Cecil has been involved in the industry since its inception, creating text adventures in the early 80s, then establishing his own company, Paragon Programming, before moving to work for Activision. Cecil is best known for establishing Revolution Software and creating the Broken Sword series.
They don't make animations like that anymore.
A study titled Understanding the Effect of Violent Video Games on Violent Crime has found gaming may be partly responsible for falling crime rates. Researchers in Texas working with the Center for European Economic Research determined that an increase in violent video game sales corresponds with a decrease in violent crimes over the given test period. While the study didn't determine whether violent games have an effect on violent behaviour, it argued that any adverse behavioural effects are offset by the fact that games keep people occupied and off the street.
I began this journey intending to create, not to destroy.
Spacefaring MMO EVE Online has seen mass play revolts over the introduction of a virtual marketplace, charging high prices for vanity items. One example is a monocle your character can wear, currently selling for over $60. In response, players in their thousands have attempted to cripple the in-game economy by locking down trade ports.
You are much more powerful than you think. Creation is so precious, and greed so destructive.
The fan uproar was further fueled by a leaked internal newsletter from EVE Online's developer CCP Games entitled Greed is Good, which discussed ideas for how to best make money from their players. Notorious hacking group LulzSec has now disbanded. The group released an official announcement saying they had completed their 50-day mission to disrupt and expose corporations, governments, and often the general population just because we could. The group committed one final hack, publishing over 500,000 usernames and passwords from the 2009 Battlefield Heroes beta.
Good game!
30 years have passed since the Legion was destroyed, and Ebb has suffered in that time. War rages without end between Jane Cassander in the east and the royal family in the west. A few sons and daughters of the Legion remain. You are one of their number.
It's been years since the last Dungeon Siege game, both in real time and game chronology, and the gap between games is fairly obvious, not just in the plot but in the game mechanics. Obsidian has taken over from gas-powered games, and the result is a game that's quite different from previous ones in the series.
It's a bad time for the kingdom of Ebb. The 10th Legion, a force of noble warriors founded by the Farmer, the hero of the first Dungeon Siege game, have been laid to waste by Jane Cassander and her army of zealots, convinced that the Legion was responsible for the murder of the king.
The level design is still made up mostly of narrow corridors that you'll need to fight your way down, but nearly everything else has changed. This is far more of an action game now, with each of the characters having a basic attack, block, and dodge, as well as access to special abilities that are unlocked throughout the course of the adventure.
Characters have 2 combat stances that you can jump in and out of at any time, and each of these have 3 abilities linked to it. On top of that, there's 3 defensive abilities as well. It's a pretty simple system, but it works.
The special abilities and defensive abilities require different resources. Special attacks use focus, and defensive abilities use power. Normal attacks generate focus, and special abilities generate power. Everything ties in together, really encouraging you to use all of your abilities rather than just spamming attacks.
I like the way the combat plays out. There's not a great deal of depth to it, but it all just flows nicely. It's all real-time, so there's no stopping and pausing and issuing commands. It's just fast-paced, real-time bad guy killing.
And you know, surprisingly, I actually liked that there's no such thing as a health potion in this game. I mean, most action RPGs allow you to sort of collect and stockpile health potions or items to chug anytime you take damage, and I usually rely on that. The only way to heal in this game is to kill enemies and hope that they drop a green instant healing health orb, or gather enough power to use your healing ability, which is the very first ability you unlock.
Yeah, you literally have to fight to stay alive.
You get your other skills by the time you reach level 20, and I like most of the individual abilities, Barjo, but I just found the whole system too limiting. You can only put points into the secondary effects of a couple of skills, and there's just not much more skill customization than that.
Yeah, I don't mind that so much, though. It helps you keep focused on the action rather than just spending all this time in menus. Also, there are 12 passive abilities you can put into your character. I agree that it doesn't have the deepest of character customization, but I think this game is first and foremost about action.
I just feel like the choice of skills was really secondary to the loot that was dropped. The fact that the loot is random means that you can't guarantee you can gear up your character in a way that complements their skill. I also thought the game did a really bad job of explaining what half the attributes do. I mean, sure, it's easy to work out what vampirism and bloodletting are, but what about doom and warding?
I did find it a bit weird that the random loot generator seemed more interested in gearing up my companions than myself. What about me? It's all about me.
Yeah, there are 3 other characters that become available as AI companions throughout the game. You don't have any direct control over them, but they're definitely handy to have around. As well as helping out in fights, the companions will run around and pick up any gold you may have missed. They can also resurrect you if you die.
I thought the companion AI was a bit inconsistent. Sometimes they fight really intelligently, but the rest of the time it's just, all their actions are a bit random. Ranged characters run into melee range, and characters with group attacks focus on single targets and let the player get swarmed.
I think the idea of the companions is to make the single-player game feel more like a co-op experience, but the AI just lets you down.
And, you know, I love me some co-op, but it's just pointless here because whoever's hosting gets all of the XP and all of the loot, and whoever's joining the game just comes away with nothing.
What about the warm, fuzzy feeling of helping your fellow gamer?
Yeah, don't care, I want loots.
Yeah, it's a bit silly that a game about XP, loot, and progression doesn't give you any of those things when you're playing with your friends.
The co-op camera also has some issues. It's frustrating because you're stuck in the same screen.
Yeah, there are a few problems that bugged me as well. The auto-targeting for ranged weapons, for example, was a bit dodgy. Half of the time it seems to prioritise the wrong target, or attacks get caught up on an errant pixel. It's frustrating for most characters, but especially so for Katarina because all of her attacks are ranged.
Yes, but back to camera angles. I was bothered by the single-player camera too because there's 2 levels of zoom, but they both feel a bit cramped, and I was always craning my neck to try and see more around the corner.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to get beaten up by something just out of your field of vision, especially in boss fights. I don't know whether it's related to the camera, but there's also a bit of tethering exploit in the game. When monsters roam too far from their spawn point, they just turn around and walk away, allowing you to just attack them with impunity.
It's not so bad if you're playing as a melee, but if you're ranged, you need range to get anything done, so it becomes very annoying.
This may be a bit of a personal beef, but I was a bit thrown off by the change of tone about halfway through the game. It starts off all serious business, but then when you reach the city of Stonebridge, things take a turn for the wacky with snooty robot policemen.
I'm instructed to treat you with tepid disdain and mistrust.
Goblins with a taste for animal cruelty.
So many unanswered questions of gravity. So few cats.
And some dude called Baron.
I'm Hans. This is Baron.
Then it goes right back to the deadly seriousness of regicide and war crimes.
I didn't mind that so much, but then I think I was just distracted because I played through this whole game without a single glitch or crash, and it was made by Obsidian.
True. Final thoughts?
I think it's unpretentious fun. This is a game about killing stuff to get stuff, and they do a pretty good job here, and you'll have unpretentious fun, so I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
You know, I do think there's a lot to like about this game. The combat engine is great, there's lots of good encounters and quests, but I just felt like it was a bit too light on the RPG side of things. It really is more of an action game, so I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Good game.
Okay, Hex, I think we have time for a few quizzes. What you got?
Quizzes?
Questions.
All right, well, how about this one from Jared in Darwin, Northern Territory?
Slang questions. Dear Barjo and Hex, is there actually going to be a Half-Life 2 Episode 3? And is there any legit gameplay footage or trailers? And in Halo Reach, what happens to Jun and Dr. Halsey? These 2 questions have been bothering me for ages.
Well, Jared, Valve definitely said there was going to be an episode 3, but you, us, and everyone else would love to hear something or anything about it. I mean, come on, Valve, stop screwing around with hats for Team Fortress 2 and just make episode 3 or Half-Life 3 already. Sheesh, I mean, how hard can it be?
I know, right? It's probably just some giant epic troll. So in other words, no, there isn't any gameplay footage or trailers. At this stage, who knows what's happening? Episode 2 came out in 2007, so we're coming up to 4 years now with barely a word about it. That's a long time. We demand you appease us, especially after episode 2's cliffhanger ending.
As for what happens to Jun and Dr. Halsey, well, according to the game, this is the last we see of them.
Dr. Halsey, Noble 3 will escort you to castle base.
I require no escort, Commander.
June, make sure nothing falls into enemy hands.
I'll do what's necessary, sir. Good luck.
You too, Rifleman.
Which leaves the door fairly wide open.
Now, the game actually did a big retcon with a lot of the events and timeline that the Halo books had laid out, so the waters have been quite muddied. But according to the lore, Dr. Halsey definitely survives, while the fate of Jun is still a bit of a mystery for now. Who knows? It's probably a big plot point in the recently announced Halo 4.
All right, moving on to this one from Why? What's yours? In New South Wales. In Portal, how do you get the terminal velocity and long jump achievement? Because I always hit the sides of the portal. TNX.
Well, those are actually both very easy chivos to get. For terminal velocity, simply find a corner of a room, any room will do, put a portal on the roof and a portal on the ground, and then fall through it. Just make sure they're nicely aligned, and you shouldn't hit the walls. It takes about 7 minutes of falling to reach 30,000 feet, so you might want to go make a cup of tea.
Clean the kitty litter?
Yeah, if you have kitties. Otherwise, go to the bathroom yourself.
Long jump is really just as easy. Simply find a room similar to this where you can put a portal quite high on the wall and then simply put another portal a little way away on the ground. But make sure you're actually facing your first portal when you place it. This is because your portal's gravity is affected by which way you're standing when you shoot it. And if they're both facing in the same direction, it won't work. But if one is flipped, it'll keep you falling in the loop and the chivo should pop up fairly quickly.
Alrighty, well, that was all a bit Valve-tastic, wasn't it, Hex? I think we have time for one more quick question, and it's from Edge in Sydney. Can you please explain what is that animal in My First Love? A horse or a dog? Please, I have money on this with my friend.
Well, Edge, you both lose that bet because it's not a horse or a dog, it's a llama.
La llama. Indeed, and it's actually from the opening of one of Jeff Minter's early games, Hover Bobber. If you know Jeff Minter, you'd be aware he has a strange obsession with llamas, to the point of calling his own company Llama Soft, and actually owning llamas.
And that's all the time we have for this week. If there's something that you think we can help you with, then why not ask us here? Horse or a dog.
Good game.
Well, Good Game has always had a roving reporter as part of the team. You may remember Lux, Ray, and last year Ajax. Well, now it's time for someone new. May I present Goose?
Thanks, guys. Great to finally be here in the den of gaming.
Welcome, Goose. I'm glad you passed the initiation ceremony.
Untangle the cables.
We have some more questions for you, though. Firstly, how did you get the name Goose, and how long have you been a gamer?
Well, guys, I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember. I used to go to my best mate's house to play the old Nintendo, and our favourite game was Top Gun. I was a bit of a maverick myself, so I went with the nickname Goose.
Don't get it.
And what was your first gaming love?
Well, when I finally got my first console, which was a Super Nintendo, I used to sit down with my sister and play all the RPGs. So Zelda, Shadowrun, and my personal favourite, which was Secret of Mana.
Excellent choices. Well, I think he has passed the test, Hex.
Agreed. You may stay. So what have you got for your first story?
Well, I look into game review scores and see what kind of impact they have on the industry.
Let's take a look. Do work on your posture, though. Like this. Like this.
Scores. We use them every day as a means to rate everything from the latest blockbuster films to our favourite restaurants, even friends. And it's the same with games. But why do we place so much importance on the score a game gets? And what's it really telling us?
It is the instant, I guess, recognition of the quality of this game.
It's really one of the easiest ways that we could find out what people did and did not like about our game.
Sometimes it becomes more of a game in picking what the right number is rather than actually thinking about the entertainment, the experience that they had.
It's weird to be in an industry where if you aren't, you know, an 8 or 9 or a 10, that's considered a failure in so many aspects, right? It's putting like a qualitative number on what, you know, we at least perceive to be like a work of art.
So many times arguments develop over whether the game is an 8.1, an 8.7. I mean, how do you really define that? You know, how do you define 3.5 stars over 4 stars?
One of the biggest pieces of confusion amongst the audience out there is the different scoring systems. So you could have 1 to 10, you can have 1 to 5, you could have 4 stars, you could have 3 stars. So it becomes confusing to an end consumer as to what that actual sort of quality bar is.
The problem is we've weighted scores so much, right, that a game that might actually be a 7, an average game, is, you know, it's scoring, you know, an 8 or a 9, and it just throws everything out of whack.
The skew toward the higher end of the scale is amazing. I mean, you'll see a game that is just absolutely trashed in the words that are written for the review, but the game gets a 5.5. Okay, why? Okay, if a game is absolutely trashed, if you're using the whole system, it should be a 1.
When you look at a game and you don't like it, you don't want to give it a 1 out of 10 because on some level the game is functional, you know, the game works as a product. Like, you can run around, the graphics work, there's not too many bugs. So in that sense, it's a functional game. So scoring it a 1 out of 10 isn't really an option in that regard if you're viewing a game as a product. So I think that's got a lot to do with it. We're still stuck in this whole, you know, like as a game of TV or as a game of movie or as a game of a subjective experience that we should judge in that way.
With so many sources for reviews out there, it's getting harder to know which scores to trust. Sites like Metacritic and Game Rankings deal with this by crunching together words, numbers, and stars into one ultimate score. But what happens when we all take this aggregate score to be the correct one?
If you're working on the game, right, and you have a feeling like, oh God, we're not gonna hit an 8, right? You know, we're not gonna hit a 9, we're not gonna hit a 10. It can definitely have an effect on the morale of the team, absolutely.
Talk to me, Goose!
Because we throw so much, you know, weight towards that Metacritic score, you know, if we got rid of that, you'd almost feel a little better in some respects, right?
You know, they'll take a star system, a 5-star system, and if a game gets 3.5 stars, they'll turn that into a 70. Well, 3.5 stars on a 5-star system, especially if you look at movies, that's a pretty good score. But yet, if you equate it to a 70, you know, you're getting publishers calling you up and saying, why did you trash my game? No, we didn't trash your game. We gave it 3.5 stars.
You've had some publishers even use Metacritic aggregate scores as their benchmarks for studios. So if certain studios don't get the Metacritic benchmark that the publisher wants, then, you know, there could be some, you know, negative consequences.
The really worrying thing about review scores is the fact that, you know, you do get some PR and some industry people that seem to be getting judged on review scores, regardless of whether they had any input into the game's development at all, and that's quite a dangerous thing, and reflective of the fact that publishers think they can influence reviewers in certain ways, which is also quite dangerous.
I gotta find out what the hell is going on around here.
You sit in meetings where it's like, if this feature isn't included, you know, what's it gonna do to our Metacritic score? And it's like, you know, who cares? Like, let's make a decision based on what the game needs and not about how it's going to affect the score down the road.
With such a diverse range of experiences to be had in gaming, is simply slapping on a score the most accurate way to measure a game's potential? And in the future, will we even need review scores at all?
On one hand, I want to get rid of them, throw them away, I hate them. On the other hand, I understand their importance. At the end of the day, I think that consumers are using scores to help base their purchase decisions on, and that's important. You know, a score is important in that regard.
If you want to serve the reader and not serve Game Rankings or not serve Metacritic, you need to tell them what they want to know. And the idea is, should I spend my $50 on this game? If, you know, maybe a lot of the sites got together and created a standardized form for a numbering system or a star system so that they all tried to follow that same scoring system, I think that would help.
I think most consumers at the end of the day will always want that quick and easy indicator, so they'll need a number, they'll need a star system, they'll need a thumbs up or thumbs down. They're not just going to purely rely on text, because a lot of people just don't have the time to go through an entire piece of text.
I think most people, are more passive in their choices. They make choices about things they're aware of, and they become aware of them through marketing and through what people they trust recommend to them. And great games get recommended, and it doesn't matter what the score is. If you entertain people, that gets recommended. And if you fail to entertain people, then that's not going to get recommended at all.
This is kind of embarrassing because it's a long time ago now. But you know what? I played video game Pong.
Oh, it was Pong. I played Pong. Absolutely, back in 1976 or 77.
Well, the first game I ever played that actually got me hooked on video games was Pong, and I know that dates me, but I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the screen, and I remember having tournaments with my friends and my cousins.
I make my watch the first Star Wars movie reference. I make my Pong reference. I'm not in my 20s anymore, but it really was Pong. I've been playing video games my whole life, and that was the first one I played. Instantly fell in love.
Since the launch of the Kinect, there really hasn't been anything for it that appeals to core gamers. But now we finally have the spiritual successor to the psychedelic on-rails PlayStation shooter Rez, and it's called Child of Eden.
The story goes a bit like this. A girl called Lumi was the first human born in space, and because it's the future, the internet is much bigger and called Eden. And Lumi, for some reason, has been rebuilt in Eden, but finds herself under attack by hackers, or a virus, or a corrupted save or something, and it's up to you to save Lumi and Eden.
Yeah, clearly you're not going to be playing this for the story. Although, who doesn't like the idea of being inside a computer, flying through cyberspace and fighting off corrupted data? Just like Rez, this is based around the idea of synesthesia, a rare medical condition where people can see colour in sound, taste, and even letters. But here all it means is that everything you do is cleverly woven into the music. So enemies act as a particular note or a part of a song. It all makes for a very hypnotic playing experience.
When this comes out on PS3, you will be able to use a PlayStation Move, but we've used it with the controller and the Kinect, and we found the Kinect was a much better option. It's very responsive. It takes a few goes to get into the swing of things, but you do feel very powerful throwing clusters of missiles and shooting lasers from your hands. Compared to the controller, it felt much easier and quicker to paint your targets. You can do these big sweeping motions across the screen quickly and accurately. This is the first Kinect game that I've had genuine fun with. You know, my arms started to get sore after about an hour, but I just powered through because I was actually having fun.
There are two ways to play with the Kinect. Our favourite was using your right arm up to lock onto up to 8 missiles with your left arm controlling a rapid-fire laser. It's just so satisfying having two guns for hands.
Pew, pew, pew. Pew, pew. Sorry.
If you want to, though, you can make it so you just use one arm and clap your hands to switch between weapons. Mostly you can use either gun to get by, but you do have to stay on your toes for which is best to use. You'll need the quick-fire laser to take down incoming missiles as well as anything purple, while missiles are often the only way to take down some bosses. You can also throw your arms above your head to activate a screen-clearing missile attack known as Euphoria. This is a bit disorientating, though, because your hands control the camera, so every time you use it, the camera suddenly tilts up. It's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely the weakest part of the Kinect controls.
The previous game, Rez, had a rumble feature, which was a big part of the game. You'd get that feedback as you played, and I was worried that without that it wouldn't be as much fun, but it's just a different type of feedback here, because the way the music and the gameplay are woven together, you end up doing this weird laser shooty dance thing.
As wanky as it sounds, it is really easy to lose yourself in the experience here, especially if you've got a big screen and sound system to play it on. Although you do look like a bit of a crazy person trying to grope the air when you first get going. going. That aside, the game itself is broken up into just 5 levels or archives, and if you don't die, they only take about 10 to 20 minutes each to finish. That doesn't sound like much because it isn't. Most people will be able to clock this one in just a couple of hours.
But this is a game that you'll want to replay, not just because you want to hear those good songs again, but you get better the more you learn about the enemy patterns. In fact, your first playthrough is really just a tutorial. There's quite a lot of strategy to getting those high scores. Nailing an 8 missile lock-on will net you a score multiplier, and for each one you get in a row, you'll up that by 1. Stuff it up and it's gone.
Yeah, this can actually get pretty tough. It took me quite a few goes to get past that second last archive. If you do just want to enjoy the sights and sounds without the threat of death, there is the option to do that, but you'll need to unlock the levels the hard way first. And once you get the hang of it, you'll probably want to up the difficulty, which throws more enemies and missiles at you while also dealing out double damage.
There's plenty to unlock too. Music videos, artworks, effects for the title screen, and even visual filters, which change the look quite dramatically. And when you complete the game, you unlock a 6th archive, which you'll have to survive for 10 levels on only 3 chunks of health. And there's leaderboards as well, which give you an incentive to come back, but we should wrap this up. Hex, final thoughts?
Well, I think we could write a whole thesis on the visuals of this game. How when you shoot, you tend to create and evolve the world rather than destroy it. How it seems to chart the evolution of life from amoeba to spacefaring civilization. It really is a sensory tour de force. But what really matters is it's great fun and it makes you happy. I mean, yeah, I do wish there was more of it, but I'm always for quality over quantity, and this is pure quality, so I'm giving it 9 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, it is a bit light on content, but once you sit down with this for more than 10 minutes, you just really start getting into the groove of the game, and it's quite addictive. It's so pretty, and you just want to hear those songs again as well. Even if you don't have a Kinect, this is a solid follow-up to Rez, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10 rubber chickens. Earlier in the year, we caught up with the game's creator, Tetsuya Mitsuguchi, and you can see that full interview on our website.
So did you guess the game for this week?
Did you?
It was the music rhythm game Space Channel 5, released in the year 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast system. With the groovy pink-haired Ooh-La-La at the helm, the aim of the game was to dance a bunch of hostages out of the grasp of invading aliens, which doesn't really sound like a standard rescue operation procedure to me.
It was also ported to the GBA and the PS2. Some facts. Next week, we finally dive into the dungeons of Hunted the Demon's Forge for some co-op hack and slash.
Plus, the first-person shooter with lots of frights in our sights with Fear 3.
Nice.
Thanks.
I think you felt guilty.
Plus, we see what the 3DS brings to one of the greatest games ever, Zelda Ocarina of Time.
And if you want to win this old game, then don't forget to jump on the forums and plead your case, or the Good Game Facebook page, or hashtag GGTV for the tweet stream.
Until next week, gamers, Bajo out.
Hex out.
Nice flip work.
Can I get it?
Maybe I'll show you something. Yeah.